Okay, everybody, let's start with the end of day review for today. Today is August 18th. I want to start with a quick SPY commentary because my two trades that I took were all based on the SPY action yesterday. So let's pull up the yearly chart real quick. Usually what you can see is when the SPY has a nice wash to the downside. For example, here, next day you get somewhat of a nice little rebound after morning wash. Right here, same thing. Wash, next day you get a little bit of a rebound. Same here, rebound, here rebound, here rebound. So this is usually a pretty typical pattern that people like to do, like accumulating more SPY shares or like buying dips on the overall market once the market had a nice dip to the downside. So basically my thought process was, since I don't want to trade SPY based on the price and the range, I like trading UVXY, which represents the fear in the market, which is an ETF on the VIX index. So the VIX index represents the fear in the market. You can see if you compare it to the SPY, this up day right here was August 10th. This day up here was August 17th. So if you pull up the SPY chart, these were exactly these days, August 10th and August 17th. So the fear in the market always increases once the SPY drops to the downside, which is pretty common sense. So what you can see on these leveraged ETFs that represent the volatility or the fear in the overall market is that usually what you can see is after they had a nice run to the upside, most of the times, I would say 80 to 90%, they only last for one day. Then the next day they're getting sold back off because, as I was mentioning, the SPY usually on the second day has a nice little rebound. And when the SPY has a nice little rebound, obviously this takes fear out of the markets. So hence the ETFs are fading to the downside. So I was prepared for this. This was my main watch. Nice little ramp yesterday with the SPY unwind. I was looking for a nice little short up here. I would have loved a little gap up even more to get more downside on it, or even a better wash to the downside. But I was happy with the action that we had at the open. We had a little bit of a weak open here. Then I was watching it at the open. You always have to remember always to have the SPY up at the same time, because the UVXY trade always is based on the SPY action. So at the open, you had a nice little grind up here, and I was pretty confident with the short idea overall. So my first short entry was after this red to green fail here. Once we snap back, I actually took some short front side into this pop right here into the 40s, 70s with the risk based off high of days, because if we bust through, then it's obviously a red to green move and a long trend with the higher low, and it can squeeze even higher. So I was just taking a very small position. And we didn't bust through the highs here, so we saw another rejection of the red to green line, came back down, and this wash was pretty nice. This was the first trigger where I thought, okay, I can potentially add more shares to my current position into any pops. I was a little bit hesitant to actually add. This was a little bit of a mistake, but you can see here for like 3-4 minutes, we had a nice rejection of VWAP here. Which is roughly over under the $40 area, which is also pretty significant area. Always whole and half dollar marks. 40 is even a $10 mark, so even more important. So I missed this add here. I covered some into this wash because right around at this candle here, because you could see that this wash underneath this low was somewhat weak. So I figured, okay, there was somewhat of a support on the 39s, again another whole number. So I took some off here, then I waited a little bit longer. I was mentioning it in chat, I was drawing a trend line underneath the lower highs, lower high, lower high, lower high. And this was the deciding factor right around here, whether we are going to finally break down underneath the 39s or not. We didn't, so I took my position off for a gain from the 40.70s down to the 38s for the first half, and the second half from 40.70 to right around here, 39.95 once it broke this high, because then the short trend is off for the time being. So you have to wait for another short setup. We had a nice little rip to the upside here. Short plan was off, and then after this smack to the downside, this was all based on the White House news that somebody got fired. I was Bannon, or what his name is. I saw this snap to the downside, and my overall short thesis from yesterday was that UVXY usually doesn't hold up a second day. So I was right in this candle, 39.50. I took a small starter again, risking towards the VWAP area. This was somewhat of a wide risk. That's why I had a small position. I was okay with it to test VWAP, and I would take my position off when it reclaims VWAP and holds, because then there's no real short follow through, no weakness in the overall ticker here. So took a small position short after all the longs here got upside down. Overall, another red to green fail. You just combine different things. What I wanted to see, I mentioned it in chat too, I wanted to see a lower high here towards the 50 EMA, maybe even a VWAP to actually put on some big size, because I was pretty confident with the short idea. Unfortunately, this only tested for like 3-4 minutes sideways here before we got the big wash to the downside. Usually I don't like shorting into the support once it breaks down, because sometimes you can get stuffed and it rebounds 1 minute later. So I was always waiting for a potential pop to the 50 EMA, which usually, like you guys know, which is a nice trend indicator where like pops are getting sold down again. Didn't get it. My first cover was into the low 38s, somewhere here. Then I covered, I was sitting through this grind. I was waiting for a potential pop to add or another wash to cover more. So actually my last, another third, I covered into 36.64, I guess, right around here in this candle. And then I took the rest off per plan as always. We got the pop to the 50 EMA. This pop is not a nice pop anymore, because after such a big unwind, usually see somewhat of a consolidation towards VWAP. If it would, let's say, if you would have had a pop towards this area, right around here, so we get the fade. Let me actually draw it with this marker here. So this would have been a better entry short spot where you could have added some if the 50 EMA would have been lower, right around here. But since the overall pop was too big for me, I thought, okay, the overall sell-off might be off for now. We might see a consolidation first before we go lower. So I took off the rest on the higher low and the break right here, because then the current short trend is off for the time being, and the 50 EMA broke to the upside too, so there was no reason for me to hold it short. After that, I was thinking about taking another short on the flag break here. This was a little bit tricky too, because what I was recognizing, you only have an edge when you like just start in small, anticipating the wash rather than waiting for the perfect pattern. Right here, I was seeing the flag break to the downside, and I was waiting for a potential lower high again, which didn't come. I should have just done it like I did here, just put on small with the risk on the last high. Then we could have taken advantage of this wash to the downside. So I didn't get this wash. Then we got another news from the White House. Then the whole job started, and then that's where I basically wasn't interested in the stock anymore, because then I don't see any edge, because you're playing a news-based chart, which also affects the overall market, so there's no real edge to me. So these were basically my two trades, from here to here, and the rest I took it off here, and another reshort into the 39.50s, covered some here, and took the rest off here. So this was basically my day. I was one more commentary on BABA. This actually has a little turn up here into the close, like we thought it would do. Yesterday it had a nice gap up on the earnings. We saw a nice little bottom in action around 164. So after I saw the nice uptrend here, I thought, okay, after nice afternoon consolidation towards VWAP, high or low, this could maybe have a nice end of day run. I was actually anticipating it right around here. You got the afternoon fade. You get somewhat of a double bottom here. You get out of this downside trend, set up somewhat of a consolidation, and that's where I wanted to see the high or low, right around here for a potential run. We didn't see it. We saw the breakdown right here, which pretty much destroyed the overall pattern. So I was mentioning in chat that we had to wait for another setup, another consolidation here, and then a hold over the 50 EMA for a potential push. But overall, the selling pressure was pretty high. We have some a little pop to the upside that I was mentioning once we break the last highs here. But since the SPY is breaking down under VWAP here, there's no real dice longing a big name like BABA, so I didn't take this one long. And yeah, this was basically my day. If you look at the daily chart, UVXY can still have another final big red day like here once we break down, because if you look at the SPY daily chart, still a little bit undecided, just like this day right here. So usually after an undecided day, you get a nice grindy day towards one side, like this one here. So I'm ready for this one on Monday. And yeah, another main watch will most likely be FENG to the downside. So hope you guys enjoy your weekend and see you next Monday.